Let's connect with Cameron Brandt. He's joining in, Director of Research at EPFR Global. Thank you so much for taking time out. Cameron, I just want to touch upon what's going on in the US because it has been a fairly robust few days of trade. Do you think that investors are sort of still mindful about stretched valuations, the US presidential elections, and the fact that there are geopolitical risks?
I don't think they've forgotten, but there's so much good stuff in the proverbial punch bowl at the moment that it's hard to resist. There's certainly some fairly rosy assumptions about the trajectory of interest rates over here. Oil prices have come down, which makes driving cheaper for people here, always good for the mood. And neither of the presidential candidates are saying anything about fiscal discipline. So there's certainly an assumption that this sort of expansionary fiscal policy will continue into next year. And most important of all, there's definitely a feeling that we're after several quarters of consolidation, that corporate earnings are on another growth phase, and the early indications certainly haven't punctured that hope. So the U.S. market is definitely sort of enjoying a glow at the moment. That said, I think this is true for all global markets, the underlying mood is very much, what have you done for me recently? There's a lot of good assumptions baked into the current outlook for the US. China, which had the tremendous run-up, is not seeing inflows over the past 5-6 days, and responded very badly when they didn't get the stimulus measures that they were expecting. So while the trajectory in the US and some other markets is upward, I expect it to be sort of a couple of steps forward, one back sort of pattern for a while. As you mentioned, valuations are stretched. That I think applies to India as well as the US. And there's been such tremendous momentum that it's only responsible to occasionally kick the tires. I think a certain amount of that is happening in your market at the moment.
Cameron, what is your data indicating about what's happened to China in terms of net inflows? That is the story which, in a sense, is the big talking point for financial and global market allocators. Net, according to EPFR data, where does China stand?
Well, it stands very well in terms of flows. Flows have far exceeded what you might expect given market performance, even with the latest bounce. But that is largely, I think, down to tremendous domestic support. Until the Chinese policymakers really made an effort to support the market, there really hasn't been many good options for domestic investors. Property, obviously, as well, chronicled problems. Interest rates were, not that attractive. Fairly hard to get access to well-performing external markets. There remains a sense there that the wealth management products may be next in line for official attention. So the China's equity market, in some senses, has been the only game in town for domestic investors. So we've seen really eye-catching inflows, certainly since the second quarter of this year, which peaked at a record weekly total of 40 billion 2 weeks back. But last week they had significant outflows, the biggest single weekly outflow since 2015. So even in China, as I said, this spirit of what have you done for me lately seems to be sort of the determinant for flows.
Is your net data for China? I'm just curious because, in the beginning of October, before that golden week in China, everyone was saying that, okay, the China trade is the real deal. But you just mentioned in your last answer that last week China saw outflows. Can you share that number with us just for the benefit of our viewers? What were the outflows from China month to date? If you have that data, we're happy to. Would you like to look at the data? I'm happy to hold the call back.
Quickly call it up, but it was certainly in excess of 6 billion, and I think it was a bit more. Yeah, it was a sharp reversal of what we have been seeing in the previous months. Let me bear with me here. That should be up in a second. Okay. Yes, so let's see. Sorry, hang on. One more tweak to it. Yeah, so actually last week was an outflow of 4.1 billion. Only a tenth of the previous week's inflow, but a significant shift in direction.
So Cameron, if I flash on the ticker, that EPFR confirms that last week Chinese market saw outflows rather than inflows, and the China reverse story.
Funds saw outflows rather than inflows.
Sorry, $4 billion of outflows, right? That's what you're confirming to us.
Right, from China equity funds.
Okay.
Dedicated.
So if I put a flash which says that EPFR data seems to be indicating that outflows from China has started, and last week there were outflows of $4 billion, I would be mathematically and I would be correct.
That would be correct.
Okay. I hope you appreciate that. Why am I just going circling around this China point? Because for Indian viewers, 15 days ago, that was very crucial.
Right. No, I understand that there's sort of a fear that money that was previously flowing to India will now head towards China. And certainly from a valuation perspective, there's sort of more room to grow at the moment in China. But I don't think India has been abandoned. What we saw was an extremely long, historically long run of inflows finally ended 2 weeks ago, but dedicated India funds were back to inflows last week. There has been definitely moderating of the pace of flows, and I think there is definitely a sense that people have taken their exposure to India sort of up to the levels that are appropriate to sort of the economic story and how Indian corporates are doing. And it certainly picked up a little bit of concern recently about India's inflation rate and the possibility that your central bank may have to pause or even start raising rates again. There is great sensitivity, not surprisingly, to inflation figures that aren't heading down at the moment. And that's true of both developed and emerging markets.
Quite interesting, and I guess the numbers speak louder than sentiment. Cameron, great to have you on the show.
Not at all.
There comes a time when your heart calls for you to arise. Plant your feet solid into the ground. Decide your own limits, and then break right through them. Become something more. It's my time to rise.